yesterday I did this, forgot to turn it on. And then when I turned it on, I forgot to turn it off. And I forgot to give it back. And I took it up into my room. And then this morning, Madison said, hey, do you have that mic? And I said, oh, it's up in my room. I went up in my room. It wasn't there. So when we went to go to the weight room, I somehow had it with me, and it was in my car overnight. So anyway, here it is. Pretty good, huh? Okay, so I need to hook up now. I need this connection, and my HDMI comes down from here. Right. Then I need to convert from HDMI to USB-C. USB-C, and then JT has to come up here and prevent it from...
Here, I'm gonna make it so you don't have to walk over it all night like you were yesterday. Here,
JT, he's the IT guy. He plays the piano. He plays the guitar. I didn't say you did it well. I just said you play it.
I can play the guitar a little bit.
Do you play guitar?
A little bit.
Anybody play bass?
Hector does.
Bass? All right. We got skills here.
It's definitely on. It just went dark because I closed.
What do the leaves at the bottom mean?
I don't know. The TV just does that. I think it's like a TV thing. TV just really likes doing that. You should be able to present it today if you want.
I typically just do it like this. Either way, it's informal. We're friends here. We're family. Okay, so recap. This is what we said we're doing yesterday. Well, the whole idea, mission from Hector, is demolish Darwinism. So I said, okay, we'll do that. Yesterday was refuting materialism, that's the match made in hell between Darwinism and materialism by thinking about thought. So that's what we did yesterday. Today, it's the fantastic improbability of Darwin's story, his account of how things work. Tomorrow, it's the one way that Darwinists who realize that there's a probability problem try to get around it and why that doesn't work. And then Thursday, we're going to look at life with this distinctly Christian, God-honoring lens and look at how he tells story that honors himself through what he's created. So recapping, anyone want to give like a very quick summary of what the gist of our argument was yesterday? How did we think about thinking, and how does that end up undercutting the idea that we're nothing but physical? JT.
I'm going to try this.
Yeah.
You have to have faith that you can think. And
Yeah.
If you have faith that you can think, you can have faith that there's science. If you have faith that there's science, you can have faith in like what science produces.
Yeah.
And then if what science produces refutes that you have the ability to think, then it cancels out that it even like
Yes.
that.
So how does the claim that you are nothing but a physical thing do that? How does it go back and undermine?
It says that our minds don't produce anything outside of the physical realm.
Right. And so all the things that you think you're thinking about, you're not, you're confused. So you must be deeply confused. You must be basically insane, incapable of thinking. And if you're incapable of thinking, how much confidence should you place in your thinking? 0. So that takes out thinking, that takes out science, that takes out neurology, scientists, other people, the reality of the world. Everything goes when you lose your ability, when you lose all confidence in your ability to think. And you should lose all confidence in your ability to think if absolutely everything that you're meaning when you use words doesn't exist and you're confused, right? You should lose all confidence. So that's what we talked about yesterday. And that's a powerful refutation of physicalism, the idea that there is nothing but the physical. Because if that's true, if we take a step in the direction of saying that's true, then everything's gone. It all explodes. It evaporates. And if that's false, if physicalism, materialism is false, then a purely physical account of us has to also be false, right? Do you see that? Because if we have to be, remember the diagram that had the lower part has the brain, and the upper part is the immaterial part of us? If that's what we are, then a purely physical story cannot be an accurate account of how we came to be, right? Because we're not purely physical. Okay, so today, the improbability, the fantastic improbability of Darwin's story. Here's a great quote that I agree with. Vincent van Gogh Great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together. And great things are not accidental, but must certainly be willed. Okay? So when we go through this, you'll see, oh, he really hit something there. Great things are done by bringing a bunch of small things together intentionally, knowing what you're after, knowing what you're trying to do. Okay, so I claim that when it comes to explaining physical things, we have three buckets of three categories of explanation to appeal to, and sometimes we can mix them and draw from all three categories. But the basic three categories are: we can appeal to chance, so we can say chance explains this. We can appeal to physics and say, well, it's just the laws of physics operating that explains this. Or we can appeal to what I call craft, which means someone who knows what they're doing, reaching in and arranging things to accomplish some result. You might ask, why don't I call that design? The reason I don't call it design is because physics itself is designed. So there's a beautiful design to the physical structure of this universe, absolutely brilliant, and God designed it. So I don't want to use a word over here that implies that this isn't designed. It is. What I mean by craft is someone reaching in the way we do, grabbing things that are physical and putting them together in a special and clever way. So that's what we do. When we make things out of wood or metal, when you go build something, when people build, satellites and cars, they're crafting those things. They're taking physical stuff that has all these properties that are helpful for someone to build something, but iron ore isn't going to build a car, right? It's a starting point. Wood is not going to build a house. It's a starting point. Someone has to reach in and use those things. Well, wood itself is crafted because the physical elements had to turn into a tree, which is a brilliant thing. So someone had to craft the tree, and then we craft with the tree, right? So these are the three categories. I don't think there's anything else. I think every explanation of something physical draws from these three categories, and they're complete. And sometimes you're drawing from more than one of these. Sometimes you're drawing from all three. All right? That's my claim. If you can think of another category, let me know. Okay, alphabet soup. Do we ever have that here? No. Oh, yeah. Do we wish we had that here? Okay, so alphabet soup is a good way that I illustrate what chance is adequate for. Okay? So we're going to look at these three categories. What's an example of something that comes up where chance is a perfectly adequate explanation for something physical that we observe, and then we're going to look at physics being a perfectly adequate explanation, and then we're going to look at craft being an adequate explanation. And in fact, when we say craft is an adequate explanation, we're saying the other two are not adequate. We're saying chance and physics won't cut it. So here's alphabet soup. If you ever had it as a kid, you play with it usually, or you look for things that happen by chance to be spelled in there. Anybody see anything spelled in there? It's usually messy, so I've got some three-letter words here. See, may, fly. Okay, four-letter word bonus is rose, but it's really messy. So no one looks at that and goes, oh my goodness, God must be speaking to us through this bowl of alphabet soup. I did want to give this talk once. Are you seeing something, Caleb?
Sob in the middle.
Okay. Someone pointed out to me, holy, H-O-L-Y, and I said, oh, he is speaking to us. No, this is all completely unremarkable that you can put together very small words by chance, and they have every sign of being chance because you're having to do a lot of work to flip the characters around and to go around in circles to put these words together. So that we're perfectly happy to ascribe to chance. Okay, physics. If you have a really good telescope and you look at the night sky, you see things like this out there. They're called spiral galaxies. Why do they have a spiral form to them? It's a beautiful form and it's geometry. Why would stars happen to take a form of geometry? Or, to bring up a touchy subject, snow. Snowflakes have a six-fold rotational symmetry. Why would water freeze into a form that is beautiful and geometric? So you can't say, well, it's just chance, right? You can't say just by chance every snowflake has six-fold rotational symmetry. And you can't say by chance stars tend to arrange themselves into spiral shapes. That's not plausible. So what would be, if you have to draw from one of these three buckets, or maybe a combination, and chance won't do it, we're left with physics and craft. What do you think would be adequate for these two things? Physics. Even if, so you have an idea it's probably physics, even if I ask you, okay, how does physics make spiral galaxies? You might say, well, I'm not sure, but it just feels like a physicsy thing to me. It ends up being gravity. So gravitational attraction will naturally cause things to go into a spiral, and they think there's a black hole or a very, very massive core to a spiral galaxy, such that there's a huge mass in the middle, and you can imagine all these stars kind of swirling around that mass. They're orbiting basically around that mass, forming a spiral. And then the arms kind of condense because the stars are attracted to each other, and you get this spiral form. Okay, how about snowflakes? Why would water, where does geometry come from in water? Emmeline?
Maybe the molecules.
What are the molecules?
Like H2O.
And what does H2O look like? It looks like Mickey Mouse, right?
Yeah.
The oxygen is the Mickey Mouse head, and the two ears are the hydrogens. It's got an angle to it. And it's that bonding angle that causes this to be the most favorable crystalline form of slowly frozen water. Six-fold rotational symmetry. So physics, chance works for alphabet soup. Physics works for spiral galaxies and snowflakes. And then there's craft. So if you took the lid off your alphabet soup and saw this, you would know it's not chance, right? Does anyone think physics does this? Is there a law of physics that spells words in alphabet soup? No, I don't think so. So this would be craft. Somebody with too much time on their hands playing around with their soup and spelling something, right? And craft is familiar because we craft things. So almost everything that we do, that we spend any time on, could be described as crafting things, arranging things in the physical universe with an intent in mind and using cleverness to do it, using know-how to do it. So all the things that we make are products of craft. So if that's true of these things, how about these things? Okay? So if the stuff that we make requires intentional, purposeful arranging of things in the physical world to accomplish some intended end, how about these marvelous things? Well, these are the things that from a tender age, I think I quoted Alison Gopnik. Well, that's wrong quote. I'll come to Alison Gopnik. These are the things that from a tender age we look at them, whether we were raised as believers or not, and we intuit that they were made by a godlike designer. So craft is the intuited explanation for these things. And even someone who doesn't believe that, like Richard Dawkins, recognizes that these things need a special explanation. So he wrote this. He said, "The complexity of living organisms is matched by the elegant efficiency of their apparent design. If anyone doesn't agree that this amount of complex design cries out for an explanation, I give up." So he's saying this needs a special explanation because these things are so complex. He doesn't think God is the explanation. He thinks Darwin gave the explanation, but he acknowledges that they need an explanation. So when something cries out for an explanation, as Dawkins acknowledges that life does, we can appeal to these three categories. Chance, and if we say chance did it, we're saying it doesn't have an explanation, right? There is no explanation, it just happened. If we appeal to physics, we're saying physics did it, or that only works if the thing to be explained fits the nature of physics. So the geometry of the crystal fits physics, the spiral galaxy fits the physics of gravitation, and we might find other things where we don't know the physics, but it will have the feel of something that has a physical, underlying physical explanation to it. Whereas craft is the explanation. When we say it's craft, we're saying someone did it. And this is the only explanation for things that display cleverness. A snowflake is beautiful, and a spiral galaxy is beautiful, and a volcano erupting might be beautiful if you're not too close to it, but they don't look like something clever. They don't look like it's a clever intended end. Here's the quote. By elementary school age, children start to invoke an ultimate godlike designer to explain the complexity of the world around them, even children brought up as atheists. So 4-year-olds seem to automatically, when they look at living things, intuit that they were made by a godlike designer, even if their parents are never talking about God and trying to raise them up to be atheists. Okay, evidently, we can look at things that are brilliantly crafted from a tender age and intuit very quickly that that's what they are, that craft is the right explanation, and we don't need any expertise because 4-year-olds don't have any expertise, right? So there must be some simple way that we do this. So imagine this. This is a park in Taiwan. It's natural marble formations. You can see in the lower right, there's water running through there. So maybe over a long period of time, this has been carved out by erosion, largely probably water erosion, but it could also be wind erosion. And you get these beautiful contours to the marble. And you can go and wander through this park. And suppose you were wandering through this park and walking through some of the crevices between the natural marble formations, and you came around a corner and you saw this. And it's marble. But you would immediately know, okay, and you look around, okay, wind and water and erosion did not do this, right? This is something special. Someone crafted this. And you wouldn't need expertise in the structure of marble. Most of us don't even know what marble's made of. You wouldn't need any expertise in erosion or the physics of erosion. You would just look at it and go, someone did this, right? So how do we do this? How do we intuit this? How do we spot cleverness or craftedness? Or what would make something both obviously crafted and provably crafted? Because what we'd like to do is say, how does the 4-year-old do this without any calculator, they never took a math class, they never took a logic class, they don't know anything about physics or very little about physics, but they look at this immediately and know exactly what happened. Someone did that, and someone very clever and skilled did that. So that's true. It's obviously crafted, but we'd also like to say, is there a way for us to show that the 4-year-old is right when the 4-year-old says this? That Alison Gopnik has got it wrong. When the 4-year-old looks at the dragonfly and says it was made by a godlike designer, they're actually right. So we'd like both of these things to show why it's obvious and why it's actually right. And I think the answer to this, the key, is that when things have a high-level function, it's always true that they're crafted. And by high level, I mean they do something clever, and they do something that's way beyond what basic physical stuff does. So way beyond what the elements of the periodic table do on their own. And that's true of things that we invent. It's also true of the things that God has made. So that's something that is very easy to spot, and I think that's what's happening here. So I talk about inventions as being these things that are cleverly arranged in my book. And that could mean, when I say invention, you're thinking of things that you get a patent for, very complex things, like, what's this? Yeah, automobile transmission, very complex, hundreds and hundreds of parts. That's clearly an invention, but it could be something much simpler, like this. Have you been to the calf? Yeah. Go calf!
Good.
All right. So
I'm visiting the calf too.
this is an invention in that it's an arrangement of simple things, in this case letters of the alphabet, or keys on a keyboard, in order to accomplish some intended end. In this case, you're sending a message to someone trying to arrange something. So there's a thought that gets translated into language and then spelled out in characters. That's an invention. That's a clever arrangement. So all of these things that I'm calling inventions have this hierarchical structure to them, something that looks like, and this is a very simplified version of it, but they look like this, in that there's a top level function at the top. That's that top circle. That's the thing with its high level function. And below that are components within components, all the way down to elementary constituents. And each of these upward arrows is showing you that each of these groupings, each of these things, is arranged just so in order to serve the function above it. So you arrange the elementary things to make something that does something, and all of these things that are being done are in service of the top level thing, the main thing that you want to get done. And that's true of all inventions. Here, in a very simple invention, what would be at the bottom level, It's the letters. What might be the next level up? Letters to make words, words to make phrases or a sentence. And you can imagine writing something longer than this, a paragraph or an essay or the book of Philippians. It's going to be letters to make words, words to make sentences, sentences to make paragraphs, paragraphs to make sections, to make a whole book or a whole library. So these layers, the hierarchy can be very deep and very complex, but it's a very general structure. And I call what this is displaying here functional coherence. Okay? And here's a definition I give in the book. Functional coherence is the hierarchical arrangement of parts needed for anything to produce a high-level function, each part contributing in a coordinated way to the whole. I'm going to put this back up because this is what I want us to think about. If this has something to do with the statue, the marble statue, I'm asking you this: does this display functional coherence? Yes. And I want you to think about it for an hour. No. Does this display functional coherence according to this definition? Talk about it, and let's see if we can nail this idea and maybe expand the idea. And I'll hide behind this post. No. Does water ever come in here? It has. You got sandbags around the whole perimeter?
Yeah, when we came back from LA, this was all squidgy.
The carpet in here?
I mean, not all
Did you have to wet vac it or just let it dry? Get fans in here?
fans. But did you hear the vacuum going earlier?
Yeah.
Did you hear the sea monster we have? That's what we call it.
The gurgling?
It's the water that's in the vents underneath, and so they're vacuuming it out slowly but surely.
Did maintenance come in to do that?
Support services. Yeah.
Yeah, they need to do that because you don't want to have water. You don't want to have.
No.
That's not healthy.
No.
Yeah. So they're trying to clear that, but they don't know how it got in.
I think this is an old building, and
It's not that old.
20-something years old. So with the one this is at the foundation, I think, has moved a little bit. And so there's just issues because
Water gets in where it's not supposed to get in. Was this doing something? Or it was just in a crack? I don't remember what crack I got it out of.
Is it a baby?
Crack in the back.
No.
Is the crack in the back?
No, is it a little baby?
It doesn't have a function.
There.
What was it?
There. It's a tack, a thumbtack. It was just sticky in a crack here.
I'll take it.
Does this display functional coherence? That's what I want.
Yeah, it has a purpose for some reason.
I'm just going to leave it there in case the whole thing falls down. Okay, so the hierarchical, that's a hard word to say. The hierarchical arrangement of parts needed for anything to produce a high-level function, each part contributing in a coordinated way to the whole. So the question would be, how many parts does this have? Ben? It's one chunk of marble, right? So does it not qualify? Because
I think it qualifies just one part. So back at the slide, it said an arrangement of parts. So I don't think that would qualify.
it would qualify, or would not qualify.
No, I don't think it would because it says the higher. Right?
Yeah. Okay. So we have a vote for no. That's not functional coherence. Joseph.
So we were talking about the definition, and I think it might be okay to replace the word parts
So would these be the actions of the sculptor?
And then also
Okay.
talk about how this wouldn't be anything but craft. It's not random, and physics produces pattern in the way of like lightning and erosion patterns and the way mountains form all kind of look the same.
And snowflakes have their own thing. This is not like any of those.
This is highly irregular.
Did Bernard come up with this? Bernard. Okay.
Just maybe a long shot, but even though it might not be like different, like parts, as in like not made of different, like different object, like I would still say that, like you can see that the eyes are intentionally sculpted, or the arms or the legs, like, and all of these are different, like pieces that make one whole, even though it is the same.
Yeah. So the part, maybe the word parts needs to be modified here. JT.
I mean, you could kind of say, like, if you really want to get technical, that it's made out of like millions of
The little crystalline bits of marble.
yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, there's that explanation, and then there's also Joseph's explanation, which is, I think, like a chisel and a hammer would be
The process of making it. Yeah. Yeah. Anya.
I think that in the definition, it would be making something versus, so for example, the statue, it is being made versus, like, for example, if I was making it, I would be the, what's the word? I forgot.
Well, you'd be crafting it.
Yes, I would be crafting it, but I'm saying that a statue cannot contribute to the world because I am crafting it. And so it wouldn't, like, there's no parts of it that function for anything else except for just being whole and standing there.
Okay. So if this is going to qualify, either we say, nope, this doesn't qualify, but then we're in trouble, or I lied, because it has to fit in the buckets. The cause of this have to fit in the buckets chance, law, and craft. And if functional coherence is how we're identifying craft, then it doesn't go in the bucket of craft, but that leaves us with chance and physics. Was there another hand up?